Reborn, I avoided every attempt from my childhood friend, Joseph, to show his affection, because the new transfer student, the poor girl, was destined to be his heroine. In my previous life, Joseph misunderstood me for bullying the one he loved. He let thugs destroy my hands that could paint masterpieces and watched coldly as I drowned in a pool. His gaze was indifferent, his words piercing. Daisy, this is what you owe Sherry. But in this life. During a stormy night, he showed up at my door, drenched and trembling with grievance in his voice. Daisy, have you forgotten? You paint me a portrait for every birthday. The summer heat was stifling. After gym class, Sherry fainted from low blood sugar. Joseph immediately rushed to her and carried her to the nurse's office. When my best friend Lily told me this indignantly, the classroom fell silent in an instant. Everyone knew Joseph and I had been together since kindergarten. In terms of family background and appearance, we were the perfect match. Seeing my indifference, Lily grew anxious. Wasn't he Joseph the one who hated the poor transfer student the most? How could he carry her himself? I quietly stared at my perfectly intact hands. Yes, I used to think so too. Until after I died, when I discovered we were all living in a cliché romance novel titled The CEO Loves His Proud But Fragile Little Wife. The heroine was Sherry, a girl from the slums. Her prince was none other than Joseph, the boy I adored. For her, Joseph completely crushed my dream of becoming an artist and stood by as I drowned in the pool. But my death, it was nothing more than a catalyst for their romance. The proud heroine finally broke down, tearfully apologizing and confessing it was all because she loved him too much. She stayed by a guilt-ridden Joseph's side, helping him heal from his pain until they lived happily ever after. Back in the classroom, Joseph approached me, holding out his hand. Daisy, here's your favorite orange juice. I got it from the convenience store. I clenched my fists, looking past him to Sherry. She wore a second-hand school uniform, scuffed sneakers, and her hair tied in a high ponytail. In her hands, however, was a box of handmade chocolates my mom had brought back from Paris. In my previous life, seeing those chocolates in Sherry's hands had irked me. Joseph didn't even like sweets, yet he specifically asked me for that box. I assumed it was for his snack-loving cousin. Never did I think he'd give it to Sherry. Lily, always the one to stick up for me, had asked Sherry if she knew how much the chocolates cost. When she learned they were 100 a box, Sherry's eyes filled with tears as she self-righteously demanded, Daisy, do you know how many children in the mountains can't afford to go to school, and yet you'd rather spend money like this than donate it? I am so disappointed in you. Her words had made me laugh out of sheer anger. I shot back. So what? Are you holier than thou? If you're so against my chocolates, why did you eat half the box? With a cold and defiant expression, she ran to the trash can, preparing to make herself vomit. Joseph grabbed her wrist, his sharp gaze sweeping across the room as he said icily, enough. Sherry stopped, her act transforming into that of a frightened yet unyielding kitten. I had thought Joseph's reprimand wasn't aimed at me. What a naive fool I was, blinded by years of childhood affection. I am not drinking it, I rejected coldly. Joseph sighed, walked over, and ruffled my hair, upset that I took the poor transfer student to the nurse. I only did it because she looked pitiful. Sherry's already pale face turned even whiter. She glanced at Joseph in panic, almost crushing the remaining chocolates in her hand. Before I could stop her, Lily, ever observant, spoke up. Daisy's mom bought those imported chocolates. Why are they in your hands? Sherry froze for a moment. Then, just like in my previous life, she put on a defiant expression and said, Daisy, do you even realize what 100 means to children in the mountains? How many of them can't afford to go to school, yet you waste it on a box of sweets instead of helping others? Do you have no heart? This time, Lily hadn't mentioned the price. But Sherry still said the exact same thing as before, which meant she'd already learned the price privately, the aloof and pure persona she usually displayed. It was just a ploy to catch Joseph's attention. I kept my face emotionless. Sherry took a step to the side, pulling the chubby boy by the window, Nate, into the spotlight as she continued her performance. Take him, for example. Do you know how much effort he has to put in just to sit in the same classroom as you? I glanced at Nate, whose face was now beet red, and said icily, Nate, how did you get into this school? He fidgeted nervously under my impatient gaze before finally stammering. I got in thanks to the scholarship your dad established to help underprivileged students. Sherry grew flustered. Nate, I've told you before. Rich people look down on others. If everyone knows Yuri being sponsored by her family, they'll definitely team up with Daisy to bully you. In my previous life, I had refrained from ever mentioning our family's donations, worried it would hurt the pride of the less fortunate. But Nate, he'd always been infatuated with Sherry. He was a decent student but came from an impoverished background. His father had passed away, and his mother was gravely ill. In an effort to win Sherry's favor, he worked himself to the bone, secretly gifting her things. And when he found out Sherry had fallen for Joseph, he gritted his teeth and came up with the idea to ruin my hands, shoving me into the abyss of despair. I laughed bitterly at the memory. Nate, my family paid for your tuition and living expenses. We even found specialists to treat your mother. Do you think I've earned the right to eat high-end chocolates? Nate remained silent, but Sherry's eyes filled with tears as her expression twisted into one of grievance. Daisy, if you're upset, take it out on me. Bullying your classmates is just low. Nate, stand up for yourself. I don't believe no one but Daisy's family has ever helped you, not when you're always top of the class. With his goddess backing him up, Nate straightened his spine and gritted his teeth. Daisy, a gentleman doesn't accept charity with shamed eye. Before he could finish, I reached into his uniform pocket and yanked out a bank card. My family just bought 2 wolf dogs. This money would be better spent on their food than wasted on someone who doesn't know gratitude. After school, I didn't wait for Joseph. Lily was stunned. Daisy, isn't Joseph driving you to your art class? I lowered my gaze and stayed silent, quietly pulling her into an empty, deserted classroom. Inside, Sherry was sobbing, hiccuping as she choked out her grievances. Joseph, if you hate me, you can just say it directly. But I am someone who values justice. Please tell your dear friend Daisy to stop bullying poor students just to humiliate me. Joseph, intrigued, used his thumb to wipe away her tears. Then, gripping her chin firmly, he kissed her. Yuri so bad. But soon, the girl's slender arms looped around his neck, their breaths tangling in an intimate dance. Lily clamped a hand over her mouth, almost gasping out loud. Oh my God, the poor girl snagged. Joseph, you two grew up together. How could he betray you like this? Seeing my friend stand up for me, warmth filled my chest. If I was cannon fodder in this story, Lily was my faithful sidekick, destined to be collateral damage. Her dislike for the female lead stealing Joseph from me made her target Sherry at every turn, and in the end, she paid the price, dragged into an alley by thugs and violated until her life was snuffed out. As we left the classroom, I said seriously, Lily, I have a bit of a cleanliness issue. I don't recycle trash. Stop going after them. At 20 do you any good? You're just going to let this slide? Of course not. I was reborn for areas on to rewrite everyone's fate in this cursed story. The next morning, I didn't wait for Joseph to walk me to school. When I got to class, he set a bottle of milk on my desk. Daisy, why didn't you wait for me this morning? I pretended not to hear him and stood up, ready to leave, but he grabbed my wrist before I could take a step. I glanced at Sherry, who was sipping milk. She made sure to show off the packaging identical to the bottle Joseph had just given me. Joseph frowned, his voice hoarse as he explained. I didn't want her to faint from low blood sugar again. Don't get the wrong idea. I tried to pull free, but his grip was strong, unrelenting. Let go. Joseph froze, clearly stunned. I had never spoken to him so harshly before. It's just a bottle of milk. Did fine. I won't give her any next time, he said with a helpless sigh, as if he thought I was simply throwing one of my spoiled tantrums. But Sherry, of course, had to step in, her voice soft and concerned. Joseph, did you and Daisy have a fight? If it's because of the milk, I can apologize. Mind your own business. Joseph's face turned cold, but when she bit her lip and lowered her head in apparent hurt, There was a fleeting flicker of pity in his eyes. It hit me then just how much I'd overlooked before. After class, I went up to the rooftop art studio. This room had been specially arranged for me after my mom donated money to the school. Normally, no one else was allowed in. But later, Joseph had let Sherry barge in, knocking over my paints, tearing up my artwork, and sharing a passionate embrace in front of me. The memory burned in my chest as I retrieved a stack of carefully preserved sketches. On them was Joseph at 18. I remembered when I first started learning to draw. He'd hold my hand, playfully whining, "From now on, every year on my birthday, you have to draw a portrait of me." I'd agreed. From crayon doodles in kindergarten to realistic pencil sketches in our teenage years, I'd poured my heart into every single piece, and the better I got, the further away he seemed to drift. I ripped the sketches apart one by one, tearing Joseph's features into fragmented pieces. A fire burned fiercely within me. A gasp sounded from outside the door. Sherry, lurking by the entrance, stared at my actions, a flash of triumph flickering in her eyes. I stepped out, one deliberate footfall at a time. In my past life, it was right here. Sherry had falsely accused me of pushing her down the stairs. That was the beginning of my fallout with Joseph. This time, I smiled faintly, calm and composed. "This isn't a place for you. Get out." Sherry glanced down the stairwell, then leaned in, smirking provocatively. "I hate that high and mighty attitude of yours. Just because you're richer and better than me, you think you can look down on others? Do you believe I couldn't break you and Joseph apart using even the simplest tricks?" Her hand shot out, aiming to grab me by the neck. She was trying to create the perfect angle for the security cameras to capture footage of me pushing her down the stairs. So be it. No longer able to suppress the hatred boiling in my heart, I kicked Sherry hard, sending her tumbling down the stairs. A blood-curdling sound echoed through the school. "Sherry!" Joseph came running, panic-stricken. Sherry lay sprawled at the bottom of the staircase, blood streaming from her forehead. He quickly scooped her up and carried her to the infirmary. When he returned to the classroom, his eyes were ice-cold, his tone chilling. "Daisy, did you push Sherry down the stairs?" His entire body radiated hostility, as though someone had hurt the person he treasured most. I lowered my gaze indifferently, continuing to practice my sketches stroke by stroke. Joseph, furious, grabbed me by the collar. "Daisy, what's with your attitude? You think having money gives you the right to bully others?" The classroom fell silent, every face frozen in disbelief. I shoved him off forcefully, my voice frosty. "You're accusing me? Do you have proof?" Ignoring the school nurse's objections, Sherry returned to the classroom, supported by Nate, ready to confront me. "Daisy, I only came because I saw you tearing up Joseph's sketches. I thought you were upset and wanted to console you. How could you push me down the stairs?" Sherry leaned weakly against Joseph's chest, her voice trembling. "I remember how much Daisy treasures everything in that studio. There must be security cameras nearby. In my past life, she had used footage without audio, showing only visuals, to frame me. No matter how much I explained, Joseph had believed her. But this time, he immediately ordered someone to check the cameras. Their response came quick. Light cameras were broken. Clutching her bleeding forehead and fractured leg, Sherry glared at me with hatred. "Daisy, you broke them on purpose, and if I did, here's some advice. People must take responsibility for their stupidity. If you want to frame me, you better weigh your options." Joseph interrupted coldly. "Enough. I know Sherry wouldn't hurt herself without reason." His words stunned everyone in the room. "No way. Joseph's Daisy's fiancé, and he is siding with Sherry. Still, if Daisy really did it, do you think it's kind of pitiful?" Lily shot me a worried look. In the past, I would have been heartbroken, devastated. But I had awakened. I would no longer serve as a stepping stone for the male and female leads romance. Sherry tilted her chin upward, her face a mask of fragile determination, holding back tears. She limped toward the window, her eyes defiant. "I'll prove my innocence with my life if I have to." Her words startled Joseph, and Nate dove in front of her protectively, his bulky frame blocking the window. I curled my lips into a faint smile. The female lead always loved playing the pitiful yet noble act to win everyone's sympathy. I wouldn't let her have it so easily. Joseph's deep eyes locked onto mine as he asked for the last time, Daisy, no one would gamble their life just to harm someone else. Admit it, and I want to pursue the matter further. All I felt was a bitter sense of irony. In my previous life, he had also claimed to believe me. Yet when thugs cornered Sherry and me, he hadn't even spared me a glance. He just carried her to safety. That rainy night in a dark alley. My fingers had been broken one by one. The pain of never being able to draw again still suffocated me whenever I thought about it. Joseph noticed the stiffness on my face and mistook it for guilt. His expression softened. Daisy. Sherry isn't unreasonable if your family compensates her with $5 million, we can call it even. All eyes in the classroom turned toward me. Some were skeptical, others disdainful. Jealousy really ruins a woman, doesn't it? And here I thought Daisy was a fine lady, incapable of such disgraceful behavior. I believe in Daisy's character. She wouldn't stoop to something like this. Just as the school's professors were being alerted, I pulled a recording device from my pocket and played Sherry's earlier words. Daisy, people with nothing to lose don't fear those who have everything. I hate that high and mighty attitude of yours. Just because you're richer and better than me, you think you can look down on others. Do you believe I couldn't use the simplest tricks to tear you and Joseph apart? Sherry's expression finally shifted to one of panicked. Daisy, you schemed against me? No. Please believe Mesh really did push me down the stairs. They say seeing is believing, and hearing is deceiving. I was determined to flip the narrative. Sherry's plan had backfired spectacularly. She failed to frame me and ended up with a fractured leg. Nate, however, emerged as the biggest winner. Every day, he rode his bicycle to pick up his goddess, Sherry, and escort her to and from school, undeterred by the scornful stares of our classmates. Joseph, realizing he had angered me, began sending gifts to my home in an attempt to apologize to Daisy. I was wrong. I shouldn't have doubted you. I even arranged for your favorite artist's works to be photographed abroad. Will you let me in now? Every time he was turned away at the door, the 2 new wolf dogs in our yard barked ferociously at him without fail. My mother, freshly returned from a business trip, couldn't bear it anymore. Daisy. Children shouldn't hold grudges overnight. If there's a misunderstanding, talk it out and move on. But all I could see was the image of Joseph and his father conspiring to ruin my family's business to avenge Sherry. Their betrayal had left my family destitute and driven my mother into an early grave from grief. No. Some things had to be addressed before it was too late. I wrapped my arms around my mother's neck and told her about Joseph defending Sherry, even showing her photos of the 2 kissing. Her face turned icy. It's a good thing I didn't agree when Joseph's mother pressured me to arrange your betrothal as children. I also told her about Nate's blind loyalty to Sherry. Over the years, my mother had dedicated herself to charity work, especially helping single mothers battling cancer. Nate's late grandmother had made the most delicious apple pies, and my mother, who had been supported by others in her youth, felt compelled to help Nate's family. In my past life, I discovered that Nate's mother had long since recovered from her illness, but she pretended to be frail to scam additional financial aid from my mother. Mom, we can assist them financially, but we can't fix their character. Have her undergo a full medical examination. If she is fine, I think we should stop supporting them. You're absolutely right. Nate knows how much we've helped his family and still dares to bully my daughter. That is unacceptable. Relieved, I seized the moment to request an internship at my family's company. My mother readily agreed, praising me for growing more matured. A sudden memory of her from my past life flashed in my mind, her kneeling night and day in prayer, begging God to bring me back. My nose stung with emotion, and I buried myself in her warm embrace. The protagonist's aura was indeed extraordinary. While Sherry was at the hospital getting her injuries treated, she happened upon the school principal's granddaughter, who was nearly abducted by traffickers. Ignoring her own injured leg, Sherry fought tooth and nail to rescue the child. Her wounds reopened in the process. The principal organized a commendation assembly, urging everyone to learn from Sherry's selfless bravery. Her reputation saw a significant turnaround almost overnight. Some sympathized with her. I don't think ambition is inherently bad. Not everyone is lucky enough to be born with a silver spoon. Others were more gossipy. Honestly, if Joseph hadn't flirted with her first, Sherry might not have dared to provoke Daisy. I even saw them at the skating rink together and they spent ages in the men's restroom. Just saying. I ignored the rumors entirely and focused on preparing my piece for an upcoming art competition. Joseph brought me a box of expensive paints and leaned in close, his tone coaxing. Daisy, sweetheart. Stop being mad, okay? It was rare for him to lower himself like this, using that handsome face of his to beg for forgiveness. There was a time when I would trace his features with my fingertips, committing his eyes, nose, and lips to memory. But now, I instinctively leaned away, my face full of disgust. Joseph's expression darkened as he grabbed my shoulder firmly. Are you really going to erase all the good I've done for you because of one mistake? I abruptly stood, forcing him to stumble back. Joseph, let me make this clear. Whenever you've been good to me, I've always repaid you double. Your mom gave me a necklace. My mom responded with an even grander gift. Your dad's company faced a crisis. My dad helped without hesitation, offering both money and resources. But what about you? What have you done? I picked up my phone and cast a slideshow onto the projector. In my art studio, Joseph had Sherry in his arms, his lips tracing along her earlobe as he whispered, "You're so much easier to handle than Daisy. Such a good girl." Sherry's cheeks flushed as she reached for his waistband, her face drawing closer. The video ended. The room fell silent. Everyone holding their breath. Damn, Joseph's really something pulling this kind of stunt in Daisy's studio. That's disgusting. If I were Daisy, I'd be throwing up for days. Joseph clenched his fists, his face drained of color. Daisy, do you have to blow this out of proportion? Thanks to your girlfriend, I installed new security cameras in my studio with audio recording, no less. Sherry cowered behind him, too scared to speak. But Joseph coldly pushed her away, his gaze now icy and filled with fury. Daisy, I am not letting you go so easily. After school, Lily insisted on taking me to see a movie, saying it would help me unwind. Daisy, I just don't get it. You're so much better than Sherry in every way. How could Joseph possibly choose her over you? It wasn't hard to understand. The male and female leads were destined to end up together. Even without that bond, the thrill of the forbidden was a dream and endlessly chased. In my past life, after I died, my soul drifted to Joseph's home. His mother had discovered that his father was keeping a mistress and was smashing antique vases in a fit of rage. Joseph had remained indifferent. Mom, as long as you keep your position as the legal wife, it won't affect my inheritance. The cold-heartedness and infidelity in his bloodline ran deep, passed seamlessly from father to son. Not even his mother was exempt from his lack of empathy. Then why did he say he wouldn't let you go? Does he still want to marry into your family? Doesn't he have any shame? Compared to my family's wealth and influence, the Josephs couldn't compete. Joseph couldn't bear to lose the advantages my family offered, yet he was unable to resist Sherry's allure. Trying to have everything would only destroy him in the end. The night before the competition, my art studio was vandalized. The piece I had painstakingly worked on for 3 months was splattered with paint, rendered utterly useless. Conveniently, the new security cameras had malfunctioned again. The class erupted into chaos. Everyone turned their disgusted gazes toward Joseph and Sherry. This has to be revenged. Poor Daisy, she didn't deserve this. Joseph said he'd never let go. Marrying someone like him would be a nightmare. In my past life, Joseph and Sherry's reputations had never sunk so low. I was certain Sherry was responsible. Joseph didn't believe me. Back then, after my hand had been broken, he even mocked me, saying it was karma for falsely accusing others. But this time, after I told my parents everything Joseph had done, my father swiftly cut ties with his family, causing their stock prices to plummet. Joseph endured a vicious scolding from his father. Now, with my artwork destroyed, my classmates naturally pointed fingers at Sherry. Given her history with me, Joseph couldn't help but feel suspicious. fearing my family might retaliate even more harshly. Sherry adamantly denied the accusations. Joseph. It wasn't me. But you staged the staircase incident. Now you re-saying this wasn't you either. Do you have proof? I've said it countless times. It was Daisy who pushed me down the stairs. Why won't you believe me? She threw herself into Joseph's arms, kissing him sweetly to quell his anger. But suddenly, I felt a piercing gaze fixed on me, like a venomous snake lurking nearby. My body stiffened. That gaze vanished as quickly as it appeared. After my art class, I was walking along a secluded path when I noticed someone following closely behind. I was just about to run when a hand clamped over my mouth, dragging me into an alley. A boy with bleached yellow hair stood before me, a sinister grin on his face. "Yuri Daisy. Aren't you?" My eyes locked onto the snake-shaped scar on his hand, and the memories came flooding back in a wave of terror. It was him, the one who had shattered my fingers one by one with a tool. I made no effort to hide the anger on my face. "You've messed with me. Prepare to rot in prison for the rest of your life." "Seems like you've got a sharp tongue," he sneered. "Think your family's wealth gives you the right to trample over others?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Let me guess. Nate sent you?" I cut off his mama's sponsorship, and now my painting gets ruined. What a coincidence. I raised my voice, yelling toward the shadows. "Nate, you admire Sherry, but you lurk around like a sewer rat. What kind of man does that make you?" A heavy-set figure stepped out of the darkness. "Daisy, if it weren't for you, Sherry wouldn't have been misunderstood. Why didn't you clear up that it was your fault? Afraid Joseph would see through your disgusting schemes, or that you wouldn't get your high school diploma?" "Shut up. My mama's been losing sleep ever since the sponsorship was cancelled. Her cancer's come back because of the stress." I had to admit, Nate was clever. In my past life, he had orchestrated everything so perfect. I'd hired thugs, the erased evidence that I never suspected him while I was alive. This time, he hacked the security cameras and ruined my painting, once again keeping his hands clean. But there was one fatal flaw. Nate was hopelessly infatuated with Sherry. A few manipulative words from her, and he was willing to go to war with me, even if it meant dragging both of us down with him. Just as the blonde-haired boy prepared to repeat his heinous act, bodyguards descended like avenging angels. One delivered a brutal kick to his stomach, leaving him coughing up blood. Nate turned to flee, but his bulk betrayed him. I stuck out my leg, tripping him, then grabbed him by the collar and slapped him 10 times with all my strength. "Since you love being Sherry's lapdog, I'll beat you into a hot dog." Nate, clearly out of shape, was pinned down by 2 more bodyguards who had arrived. He could only lie there helplessly as I continued my assault. By the time I was done, his face resembled a grotesque, swollen pig. When Sherry arrived, she froze in shock at the sight of her loyal admirer, bloodied and bruised. "Daisy, how could you abuse someone so innocent? You dared to have him ruin my hands and tarnish my reputation. Why shouldn't I fight back?" "I didn't do anything," she protested weakly. I couldn't be bothered to argue. I simply took out a voice recorder. Sherry's soft, saccharine voice played back clearly. "Nate, I've always admired your resilience. Even in poverty, you've stayed strong and determined. But Daisy is despicable. First, she promised to sponsor your college education, then went back on her word and even stopped paying for your mother's medication. She deserves punishment. An eye for an eye." "I remember you have a friend who's pretty handy. Maybe he could teach Daisy a lesson. Get even for you." Nate's voice followed, furious and determined. "You're right. That bitch has been stomping on me like dirt. If I don't retaliate, I am a coward." The recording continued as they plotted how to break my hands and have Nate's friend assault me as a bonus. In my past life, if I hadn't bitten the boy's hand with all my strength, I might not have escaped. Even then, Sherry helped him flee the scene. This time, no one would get away. Everyone complicit would face justice. Sherry's whole body trembled with rage. "Daisy, I've never met someone so obsessed with carrying a recorder." I shrugged nonchalantly. "I crawled out of hell. Forgive me for being cautious when dealing with your merry band of protagonists." Thankfully, This world had policed. All I needed was to hand over the evidence to make my life significantly easier. She was still stubborn. The recording is fake. Joseph won't believe you anyway. Is that so? I arched a brow, pointing casually to a spot in the distance. Joseph stood there, not far off. His figure was rigid, his posture unnaturally stiff. It was impossible to discern his expression, but it was clear he'd been standing there for some time. Sherry let out a shrill scream, nearly fainting on the spot. Nate and his accomplice, both adults, were promptly arrested and sent to jail. However, Nate vehemently denied that Sherry had encouraged him, claiming he acted solely out of revenge against me. Sherry walked away unscathed once again, protected by both Nate's lies and the principal's favoritism, allowing her to remain at school. I doodled absent-mindedly on a piece of paper, reflecting on Sherry's unshakable protagonist aura. Even after causing such a commotion, she was like a cockroach impossible to eliminate. Still, it wasn't a complete loss. At least Joseph was no longer tangled up with her. He didn't give in to Sherry this time, showing not a trace of compromise when faced with her usual submissive, pitiful demeanor. Perhaps men are just inherently twisted when it comes to possessiveness. Joseph could admire her aloofness and indulge her occasional fits of jealousy, but he couldn't tolerate her using the same coquettish tricks on another man. Joseph brought a large number of gifts to my house, asking for my hand in marriage. Joseph's mother smiled warmly, saying, "Daisy, Joseph was once distracted by another girl, went down the wrong path. But boys will always have their fun, as long as his heart is with you. That's all that matters." My mother wasn't pleased. My father and she had been happily married, with no scandals or rumors. Of course, she wanted the best for her daughter. She responded firmly to Joseph's mother. Anna, as women, we know very well that men who have cheated should never be trusted again." At these words, Joseph's mother froze, her smile faltering. I've already scolded Joseph. He promised it won't happen again. Joseph knelt in front of me, his eyes full of remorse. "Daisy, it's my fault. I'll spend my life making it up to you. Please don't leave me. For your birthday this year, you even drew me a portrait. I found the torn-up pieces of paper you destroyed, and my heart ached. Only then did I realize what I had lost." I let out a cold laugh. "Joseph, if it weren't for your father's company facing yet another crisis, would you be here, lowering yourselves and begging for an early marriage?" Joseph's mother's face turned a shade redder than a dye vat. Joseph looked directly at me, his smile fading. "Daisy, no matter what I do, will you never forgive me? How ridiculous. Who would continue to love someone who has hurt them? If he had lived a life of humiliation and suffering like mine, he'd be 100 times more ruthless than I ever could be." After sending the Pei family off, my mother hugged me, clearly feeling vindicated. "Daisy, I'd rather have you happily stay home and be a mama's girl for the rest of your life than marry a scumbag." She gazed at me, her eyes filled with a mother's tenderness. There's truly no love like a mother's. But just as I was about to playfully tease her, my mother suddenly pressed her hand to her chest, her eyes closing abruptly. She collapsed. I froze in fear, immediately dialing for emergency help. After she was rushed to the ICU, we were told that she was in a coma. The doctors couldn't find any reason for her condition. I trembled, terrified. That night, I had a strange dream. I saw my mother, kneeling before God after my death in a previous life, making a pact with the devil. She had agreed to trade her life so I could live again. "Darling, no matter how far you go, always remember to come home." I ignored the pouring rain, running into the church to kneel before God. The rain mixed with my tears, soaking my body. After a long while, a priest with graying beard emerged. "Child, defying fate comes with a price, unless you can truly reverse the course of destiny." I pondered the priestess' words, thinking deeply. Reverse fate. Could that mean changing everyone's destiny? Now, Sherry's reputation was in tatters, but she was still attending classes and even applying to college. Joseph's family had found new partners and temporarily weathered the crisis. Even Sherry's accomplice Nate, and the gangsters who had once tried to kill me, were now just in jail for their attempted crimes, not the full punishment they deserved. At home, I found my father, who had flown back from abroad. Sitting on the sofa, his face lost and weary. He and my mother had been a young couple, always supporting each other without any doubts. After my mother's accident, my father had lost all interest in managing the company. I thought about the past life. When Joseph's father used their brotherly bond to set a trap for my father, causing our family to fall into ruin, his family had seized the opportunity to acquire our company's best assets, and their wealth skyrocketed. This helped Joseph become the richest man in the city, revered as the one who listens most to his wife. I walked over and took my father's hand, determination in my voice. "Dad, I want to join the company as soon as possible, Daisy. Your top priority now is to focus on your studies." No, I overheard something. Joseph's father is planning to take over our company. Impossible. I've helped him countless times. I trust him. He shouldn't be so ungrateful. I immediately pulled out the evidence of Joseph's betrayal. No matter how close a brother is, he'll never be more important than his own son. Joseph has hurt me many times. If he doesn't like me, his father surely feels the same. My dad is a typical daughter's slave and a henpecked husband. When he heard this, he was both angry and frustrated. We went to the company together. I suddenly remembered that the painting in the general manager's office was a gift from Joseph's father. I pretended to knock it over by accident. To my surprise, I found a listening device hidden inside. My dad was shocked and speechless. But he is a smart man. To avoid alerting anyone, he didn't move the device. Instead, he used this opportunity to send false information. People are strange. They often envy those who have it better than they do. Through my past life, I realized that Joseph's father had long been jealous of my dad's success. But it didn't matter. Greed often clouds one's judgment. My dad deliberately set a trap, making Joseph's father think there was a great opportunity to take over. In the end, when Joseph's father tried to steal from my father, he realized too late that he had lost far more than he gained. Half of Joseph's family wealth evaporated. I didn't dare to relax for a second. Using the memories of being a ghost beside Joseph in my past life, I warned my dad of the upcoming financial events. He had lost a lot of weight recently and occasionally coughed up blood, but refused to go to the hospital for a checkup. As I spoke to him, my father frowned deeply and suddenly coughed up a large amount of blood. "Daisy, how do you know all this?" I was terrified. Wiping the blood from his lips, taking a deep breath, I slowly said, "Dad, you may not believe it, but I've been reincarnated." I told him the most important parts of what happened in my past life. Mom's war with her life, praying to God, asking for me to be reborn, and you, standing behind us, sacrificed your health to fight against the devil, just to protect me and Mom so we could live. At first, when I was reborn, I had no memory of this, but it all came back after Mom fell into a coma and had a nightmare. Only then did I remember everything my parents did for me in the past life. They gave their lives in the name of love. Seeing the look of realization in my father's eyes, I was no longer afraid of death. But now, I feared losing him and Mom. "Dad, I don't want to lose your mom, Daisy, as long as you can live. Even if I had to do it all over again, I would make the same choice. This is the deepest kind of love from parents. It is higher than mountains, deeper than the sea, and as bright as a light that never goes out." I held back my tears and repeated what the priest had told me in the church. Maybe, when we defy fate and change our destiny, there will still be room for everything to turn around. My father nodded, fully trusting the financial predictions I had shared with him. He no longer doubted me, and began to reorganize the business strategy. He was ready to strike back against Joseph's family in full force. But just as everything seemed to be going smoothly, Joseph came back. He was clevered. He noticed that Joseph hadn't been able to take over my family as he did in the past life, and I was no longer as dependent on him as I had been before. He quickly deduced that I wasn't the only one who had been reborn. I was captured. Joseph's eyes were no longer as clear as they had been in his youth. Instead, They were filled with the depth of someone who had spent years navigating the business world. Daisy, the recent market predictions your family has been making those came from you, didn't he they? The market is so vast. Why is it that you're only targeting my family? He grabbed my chin, his eyes filled with coldness. I wasn't he afraid. My family continued to launch attacks against Joseph S., causing them to lose important orders. When they were in desperate need of help, we didn't hesitate to kick them when they were down. We repaid them with the same cruelty they had shown us in the past. Life. Joseph returned a little too late. No one dared to back him up. The bank was about to seize their mortgage properties. A sharp knife was pressed against my neck. Daisy, if I kill you, everything will return to its rightful place. Is that so? Just like in the past life, when you ignored my hands being crippled and watched me drown in the pool, all to harm my parents. There was a flicker of guilt in his eyes. But just for a moment, Joseph quickly defended himself. You were the one who bullied Sherry first. I was just standing up for her. Enough with excuses, Joseph. I've been a ghost by your side for 7 years, witnessing your marriage and children with Sherry. While you kept a mistress and let her go insane with jealousy, the person you love most is yourself. Why is it that fairy tales end with the prince and princess living happily ever after? It's because human hearts are fickle. For those who cannot stay true to themselves, marriage is nothing more than the grave of love. Joseph gave a forced, pitiful smile. So what? Sherry's only alive because she depends on me. Women should obey men. So, the only reason you were kind to me at first was because your family had to rely on mine, right? He paused. I did have genuine feelings for you. There was some truth to it, but not much to. When it came to his own interests, he'd abandon everything. Without hesitation, Joseph looked at me with pity. It's too late to talk about this now. I am the chosen one. As long as everything gets back on track, my family will rise again. I smiled nonchalantly. Do you really think I'd be so foolish? After being reborn, to let you easily capture me and take me to your secret base? I loved coming here to paint in the woods. This was the little cave Joseph and I used to love visiting when we were kids. He narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, as if remembering something, he glanced at his phone, his expression turning to one of terror. An unprecedented earthquake swept through the city. It was just after I died in my past life. Joseph, to heal, took Sherry abroad. His protagonist Aura helped them avoid the devastating experience. But this time, luck wasn't on their side. Bodyguards appeared and kicked Joseph into the cave. 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. The earthquake struck untimed, except for those whose deaths were inevitable. I had warned my father in advance. He used the evidence from Joseph's father's company's research department to alert the relevant authorities, issuing a warning to the citizens. Joseph was struck by falling rocks, severely injuring his internal organs. He was rushed to the hospital, but his organs began to fail. Sherry, who had just applied for college, was struck by newly installed lights at her home and bled to death. Outside the ICU, I waited anxiously. The doctor came out with a joyful expression and said to me, "Your mother's condition has greatly improved. She should wake up soon." I walked to Joseph's room, where he was barely clinging to life. His body was wrapped in bandages, like a sickly mummy. Daisy, we grew up together. Do you really have to go this far? If God only allows for one protagonist to exist, I hope it's me, because my life was bought with my parents' health and lives. No one is allowed to defile it. Joseph's parents arrived, their faces paled. Bankruptcy had left them unable to care for themselves. Watching their son in need of millions for medical treatment, they chose to give up on him. Some parents fight recklessly for their children, while others choose to protect themselves. The heartbeat flatlined with a single beat. Joseph's mother screamed in anguish and threw herself onto her son. Seeing her husband not as upset as she was, she lunged at him and started fighting. You thought you could be at ease with a child from your mistress? Let me tell you, without our son, I'll risk everything. Joseph's mother, in a crazed frenzy, went to the mistress's house and set it on fire. The mistress and her son perished in the blaze, and she was arrested. Joseph's father, having lost everything, went completely mad. In the past life, they used my family as stepping stones, but now they were utterly destroyed. That night, I heard an electronic voice. The female supporting character of this book has defied fate, and from now on, she will inherit all the success, wealth, and status of the original protagonist, double the amount. As compensation, the female supporting character's parents will be granted 50 more years of life. The voice soon vanished. I eagerly took my parents back to the hospital for another checkup. Everything showed good results. I quietly sighed in relief. Mom grumbled. Daisy, this is the 10th time this month you've brought me to the hospital. Can we please stop? The smell of disinfectant is about to pickle me. Dad, who was in the know, beamed with a radiant smile. It's just our daughter's loving concern. I received a message on my phone. It was about the artwork I had submitted to the painting competition it had won. First prize. The piece Nate had destroyed was just a fake. The real piece had been sent for the competition long ago. Nate and his friends were also severely injured in the earthquake, losing limbs and suffering a fate of unbearable hardship for the rest of their lives. But I had no time to concern myself with insignificant people. I stayed with my parents, admiring the painting together. The newborn infant gazed at her parents with pure love and attachment. Daisy, this is really good. Of course, our daughter is the best in the world. Listening to my parents' praise, I smiled softly, no matter what. They always saw me as their treasure. Love is mutual. My parents sacrificed to give me a tough armor, and as their daughter, I will always be their most reliable bulletproof vest. In the warmth of the winter sun, we three huddled together, walking through the bitter cold wilderness, never to look back.